All right, everybody, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive? Today we're tackling UIUC. That's the University of Illinois at Urbana, Champaign, for those of you who don't speak acronym.
And we've got some juicy excerpts that seem straight out of one of those classic college guidebooks. You know, the ones that weigh about 10 pounds.
Oh, yeah, I remember those. Like trying to pick a college was a weightlifting competition.
Exactly. But no worries, we're here to break it down. And this source dives right into UIUC's strengths. Business, communication, engineering, the whole shebang. Apparently they're up there with schools like Michigan and Wisconsin.
Not too shabby.
Yeah.
They even call UIUC a public flagship university. What exactly does that mean? Is it like the ship that carries the most students?
Well, not quite. Think of it like this. Every state has its top public university. The one that gets the most funding, attracts the best professors, and churns out impressive grads. That's your flagship.
So like the star player on the state university team. Makes sense. But this excerpt doesn't just focus on academics. It also mentions a huge Greek system.
I gotta admit, the thought of all those fraternities and sororities makes me think of toga parties.
Well, it's not all toga parties. Greek life can be a big part of the social scene at some universities, and it can provide a strong sense of community. But it can also be a double-edged sword.
How so?
Well, for students who aren't into Greek life, it can sometimes make them feel left out or like they don't quite fit in. It's all about finding that balance, right? Making sure there's a place for everyone, whether they're wearing Greek letters or not.
That's a good point. Speaking of balance, I was intrigued by the part about the marl plots. Apparently they have these experimental agricultural fields, smack dab in the middle of campus, the oldest in the nation. Can you imagine walking to your computer science class and being surrounded by cornfields?
It's like a living reminder of the university's roots. Remember, we talked about those academic strengths. Agriculture is a big one at UIUC. Right. It's like they're saying, we're a cutting-edge research institution, but we haven't forgotten where we came from. Speaking of cutting edge, let's talk campus layout. The excerpt mentions a mile-long axis. That sounds like a long walk to class.
Especially if you oversleep and miss the bus. But in all seriousness, they're going for a traditional feel with the Georgian architecture and all that. But then you've got modern additions, like the massive computer science center.
So it's a blend of old and new, kind of like our deep dives.
That's right.
Speaking of treasures old and new, we got to talk about the library. They don't just call it big, they call it impressive.
And for good reason. We're talking about the largest public university library system in the world.
In the world. Imagine getting lost in those stacks. You'd need a GPS and a packed lunch.
You'd probably stumble upon some long-lost first edition while you were at it. But seriously, a library of that scale says a lot about the university's commitment to research.
Absolutely. It's like a giant playground for the mind. And they seem to be all about pushing boundaries with their academics. Did you see those CS+X degrees? They're combining computer science with everything from anthropology to crop sciences.
It's a brilliant move. We live in a tech-driven world, but employers are also looking for graduates who can think critically and solve complex problems. These degrees show that UIUC is preparing students for that reality.
It's like they're saying, forget being a one-trick Tony, we'll make you a Swiss Army knife of knowledge. But what about students who are more hands-on learners?
Well, they've got that covered too. The Beckman Institute, for example, is all about undergraduate research, not something you see at every university, especially one as large as UIUC.
That's amazing. Imagine being a sophomore and already working on cutting-edge research projects alongside leading experts. That's invaluable experience. But with all those opportunities, I imagine the classes are pretty tough.
The source does mention demanding classes, but also points out that professors and advisors are dedicated to helping students succeed. And they have those freshman discovery courses, which are small seminars taught by full professors.
Wow, that's pretty unique for such a large university. Small class sizes, direct access to top faculty. Sounds like they're trying to give students the best of both worlds.
Exactly. And they're also committed to attracting a diverse student body. The numbers they cite for different ethnicities and international students are impressive.
It's something we talk about a lot, and it's encouraging to see a university putting its money where its mouth is. After all, a diverse campus benefits everyone.
Right.
Exposes you to different cultures, different ways of thinking.
Absolutely. It prepares you for the real world, which is becoming increasingly interconnected. But let's not forget about the practical stuff. College is expensive.
Tell me about it. Tuition these days.
Right. But it looks like UIUC has a pretty solid financial aid program. Merit scholarships, athletic awards, need-based aid. They even have this Illinois commitment program that guarantees to cover tuition and fees for students from families with incomes below a certain level.
That's incredible. It's like they're saying, if you've got the brains and the drive, we'll find a way to make it work. But enough about the serious stuff for a minute. What about fun? We've already touched on the Greek scene, but this excerpt also mentions over 1,200 clubs.
1,200! You could join a different club every day of the year and still have some left over. There's everything from academic clubs and sports teams to, well, you name it, they probably have it.
It's like a choose-your-own-adventure for extracurriculars. And if that's not enough, there's stone's throw from Chicago, Indianapolis, and St. Louis.
Talk about prime real estate. Weekend trips to the Windy City. Catching a Cardinals game in St. Louis. The possibilities are endless.
And let's not forget about UIUC's own athletic legacy. They've got a Division I program, and their basketball and baseball teams are always contenders. Plus, they've got these massive intramural facilities. They have to, with a student body that size.
Right. But here's a fun fact for you. Did you know that wheelchair basketball was invented at UIUC?
Really? Yeah. I had no idea. That's amazing.
It speaks to their commitment to inclusivity, and it makes you wonder what other innovations and discoveries have come out of UIUC over the years.
Lots to unpack there. This deep dive is just scratching the surface. But before we get too carried away, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll explore what all of this means for you, our dear listeners, and what you should consider if you're thinking about applying to UIUC. Stay tuned. And we're back, folks. Still swimming in a sea of UIUC knowledge. We've covered a ton of ground already, from those massive libraries to wheelchair basketball. But I would say it's not just about the what, it's about the so what.
Right, exactly. Anyone can rattle off facts and figures, but the real question is, what does all of this mean for you, the potential UIUC student?
Right. And one thing that struck me about this source is how much they emphasize the whole well-rounded experience thing.
Oh, absolutely. They even use that exact phrase, a well-rounded college experience. But they don't just say it, they actually back it up with concrete examples, like those freshman discovery courses we talked about, starting your college career in a small seminar taught by a top professor in your field. That's pretty special.
Talk about hitting the ground running. It's not just about cramming your head full of facts. It's about learning how to think critically, how to approach problems from different angles.
And that's what those Grand Challenge learning courses are all about, right? Tackling real-world problems, working across different disciplines. It's about preparing students for the complexities of life beyond the classroom.
It's like they're saying, forget the ivory tower, we're throwing you right into the mix. Which, let's be honest, can be a little intimidating.
Of course, starting university is a big transition for anyone, but that's where those support systems come in. Those themed living learning communities, for example.
Yeah. The ones where students with similar interests live and learn together, that's got to make the transition a little smoother, knowing you've already got a built-in network of people who get you.
Exactly. It's like a microcosm of the bigger UIUC community. You've got your people, you've got your mentors, you've got resources to help you navigate those challenges and make the most of your experience.
And speaking of challenges, let's talk about diversity for a second. This source makes a big deal about UIUC's increasingly diverse student body, which, on the surface, sounds great. But how does that actually translate into a more enriching experience for everyone?
It's about creating an environment where those different perspectives are not just welcomed, but actively sought out and valued. Think about it. You're surrounded by people from all walks of life, with different backgrounds, different experiences, different ways of seeing the world. That's bound to challenge your assumptions, broaden your horizons, make you a more well-rounded person.
Makes sense. It's like that saying, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. Diversity keeps you on your toes, right? Forces you to think differently, to engage with new ideas.
Exactly. And that's what a true education is all about, isn't it? It's not just about memorizing facts. It's about expanding your mind, challenging your perspectives, becoming a more informed and engaged citizen of the world.
And UIUC seems to understand that a diverse student body is just one piece of the puzzle. They're also putting their money where their mouth is when it comes to financial aid. The Illinois Commitment Program is huge, guaranteeing to cover tuition and fees for students from lower-income families. That's a game changer.
Absolutely. It levels the playing field and ensures that a UIUC education is within reach for all students, regardless of their background. Which brings us back to that idea of a well-rounded experience, right? It's about creating an environment where everyone feels supported, everyone has the opportunity to thrive.
And let's be real, part of that thriving is having a little fun. We've talked about the academics, the research opportunities, the support systems, But what about life outside the classroom?
Well, it sounds like UIUC has that covered too. Over 1,200 clubs, a Division I athletic program, easy access to major cities like Chicago and St. Louis. They've got something for everyone.
It's like they took everything you could possibly want in a college experience and crammed it all into one place. But let's zero in on that location for a second. Being in the heartland, within spitting distance of those major urban centers, that's got to open up some serious doors, right?
Absolutely. Think about the internship opportunities, the cultural experiences, the networking potential. UIUC students have a front row seat to some of the most vibrant and dynamic cities in the country.
It's like having a launch pad for your future, right there on campus. But you know me, I'm always looking for the deeper meaning.
Oh.
So, big picture, what does it all mean? What's the takeaway from this deep dive into UIUC?
I think it boils down to this. UIUC isn't just offering an education, they're offering an experience, a transformative experience that goes beyond the classroom and prepares you for a lifetime of success, however you define it.
All right, deep divers, time to surface from this ocean of UIUC info. My head's spinning. World-class libraries, cornfields in the middle of campus, wheelchair basketball. Who knew?
It's been quite the adventure, right? And I think what's really impressive is how UIUC manages to be both, well, massive.
Seriously, those residence halls sound like cities unto themselves.
Right. But they also seem to genuinely care about creating a welcoming, supportive environment for every student.
Totally. They're not just paying lip service to things like diversity and accessibility. They're actually putting in the work. The Illinois Commitment Program, those themed living learning communities. They're really trying to make a UIUC education possible for anyone who's got the drive.
And I love how they haven't forgotten their roots. Starting as a land-grant institution, that connection to agriculture is still woven into their identity today.
Yeah, it's almost like those moral plots are a symbol of that. Like, hey, we're UIUC, we've got a legacy here. But they're not stuck in the past either.
Not at all. They're pushing boundaries with their research, giving undergrads a chance to get real-world experience. They're thinking about the big picture, not just churning out graduates who can, recite facts and figures.
Exactly. They want you to be able to think for yourself, to solve problems, to make a difference in the world.
And where better to do that than a university that's practically bursting with opportunity? Think about it. You've got top-notch academics, cutting-edge research, a supportive community.
Not to mention a front-row seat to some of the most dynamic cities in the country.
Right. Chicago, Indianapolis, St. Louis, all within easy reach. It's like they've created this incredible launch pad for exploration and growth.
So for any of our deep divers out there who are considering UIUC, I think the message is clear. This is a place where you can be challenged, supported, and inspired all at the same time.
Absolutely. It's about finding your people, finding your passion, and finding your place in the world.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. But before we go, we want to leave you with a little something to ponder as you continue exploring UIUC, and we encourage you to do your own research. Think about how all these pieces fit together. The history, the location, even those quirky little details like the moral plots. How do they all contribute to making UIUC the unique and dynamic institution it is today?
That's something for you to chew on.
Food for thought, deep divers. And with that, we're officially signing off. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the heart of UIUC.